I'm very excited to welcome back, one of those incredible women, Anjali Kumar. So many of you may remember Anjali as one of our fearless lawyers, a senior counsel who worked on projects from Google X to YouTube, but many more of you may remember Anjali for hosting the At Google Speaker Series, bringing in incredible chefs like Anthony Bourdain, Jacques Pepin, Marcus Samuelsson. I hope you got some really good secret recipes from all these folks.
Got a lot of really great reservations, I will tell you.
Nice.
I still milk that, yeah.
Nice. And to entertainers like Questlove, who you might remember from her series Lunchtime at Google.
Short-lived, but so fun.
Delightful. Anjali, like most of us, knows that most people's hearts live in their stomach, and so you're always having people who could talk to us about food. So after leaving Google, Anjali went to be founding general counsel and founding head of social innovation at Warby Parker, and most recently was the chief people officer at Cheddar. And throughout these jobs, Anjali was also pretty busy, starting a family with her beloved husband, Atul. In 2010, she had a daughter, Zia, and it was right around then that she started to think about religion. And as a new mom myself, I can totally relate to the fact that there's nothing like having a baby to make you peek your head up around out of your bubble and say, how do I explain the mysteries of life? Yeah. So Anjali is here today to tell us a little bit about how she turned over every rock in what seemed like every corner of the world's religions and spiritual groups and sects in her incredibly delightful book, Stalking God. So without further ado, please help me give a warm welcome back to Anjali Kumar.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It is such a thrill to be here. And to actually not know everybody in the audience means that more Googlers showed up than just my team, which is so meaningful. Thank you.
So Anjali, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, what was life like growing up for you? Where did you grow up? How did you kind of get to this place where you were asking all these questions?
Sure. So I was born in Brooklyn, actually, but raised outside of Chicago. Brooklyn, woohoo, yeah. Woohoo for Brooklyn. And raised outside of Chicago by Indian parents. Jain is my religion, so it's sort of a small, very minority religion, at least outside of India, but raised culturally Hindu. And also went to Catholic school. Like you might get a sense of why I wrote this book when you start hearing things like that. Like there are a lot of religion and a lot of traditions around me. And for me, it was really cultural. And it was just something that I never really thought much about or questioned because it was so seamlessly interwoven into our lives. And I just never felt the need to ask the big questions. And as you said, it was when my daughter Zia was born, which happened when I was at Google, not physically at Google, but hold on, we're having a mic issue. Keep going. Okay, so it was while I was employed at Google. I had my daughter Zia about 8 years ago, almost 9 years ago. And it was in a conversation with my dad when he said to me soon after she was born, he was like, oh, you should take her to the temple. There's a Jain temple out in Queens, and you should take her there to show her what we believe. And I was like, what do we believe? I was like, that's a really interesting question. I was like, what do we believe? I was like, wait, did I miss something? Because I was into the traditions and I wanted to do all the right things and check off all the traditional boxes, but I was like, I don't really know what I believe, and I just had never thought about it. So I decided to start researching because I realized there was at some point there would be this set of questions that my daughter would inevitably ask me, like what happens when you die? Is there a God? How do you find happiness? What's the meaning of life? Things that I could not Google an answer to. Literally, that was the start of the journey. And so I started doing research, and I was like, well, what do I really believe? And maybe I'll go see this healer and go do this other thing. And it started as a very quiet thing because I worked at Google, and I was like, everyone's going to think I'm bananas. And I worked at Google in the legal department, so the last thing you want is your lawyer going off and doing all this crazy stuff. But then as I started telling people, and especially colleagues at Google, they really surprised me because they started being like, oh, have you checked out this thing? I'm like, I know this healer downtown, or I saw this shaman, or I've tried ayahuasca or whatever. And I was like, what? I was like, everybody's doing this stuff except for me? So I'm the only one who hasn't been searching. And that's what started the whole thing.
I was looking, while I was thinking about what can I talk with you about, I was looking at emails that we had exchanged, and there was one titled Amma. Yeah. And you and I are both friends with Gopi.
Yeah. Googler extraordinaire.
Yes, if you guys don't know Gopi, you should. But he started the Yoglers group, and he teaches yoga out in California, amongst the many other things that he does, including being a Googler. And he turned a lot of us on to Amma, who's sort of the hugging saint. And I know you wrote about Amma in your book. Can you tell us a little bit about her?
Sure. She's actually my opening chapter. And it was through a conversation with Gopi where he was like, oh, I follow this woman, Amma. She goes around the world literally hugging people. That's her job. That's what she does. It sounds like, I mean, kind of a weird job, but it's, she makes a lot of money doing this. And so she goes around the world giving hugs. And she was coming just to Midtown Manhattan. It was like July 4th weekend many summers ago. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go check it out. And I jump in a cab and I go there. And it was so interesting. It was like lines out the door, thousands and thousands of people. I stood in line for probably over 4 hours waiting for a hug. And then had this experience of like settling in and like, it was like an overfamiliar auntie. And if you've ever experienced that, like you're kind of like, this is getting uncomfortable. Like can you let go of the grip? She wouldn't let go. But then suddenly you're like peeled off of her and like thrown off to, like just like a puppy, like just thrown off. And it was deeply unsatisfying for me personally, but so satisfying to so many people there who were in tears having hugs from her and who were really deep followers. And I think that also helped me sort of go into all of these experiences with a really open mind, being like, just because it's not right for me, there might be something that I can take from it and then continue on the journey to find what really resonates for me. But then I really respect the fact that Gopi and other friends of mine really believe in her and really follow her around the world and go every summer to get a hug from her. Yeah. I have not gone back. But there's great food when you go, and so that's, if you're not into the hug, there's amazing vegetarian food in the basement of the hall.
Nice.
Yeah, there's always something redeeming in all of these things.
So speaking of belief, your husband is a doctor, right?
Yeah.
As a scientist, what did he think about all of this?
He thinks I'm bananas.
Response?
What do you think? He is the most patient man in the universe. So he is an interventional cardiologist. Like he is a superman of science, and I think for him, again, so much of spirituality, religion has just been cultural for him. So he doesn't really think about it. He doesn't waver around these questions. He sort of goes through the motions of religion. He's Hindu, was raised Hindu, and I think if pressed would call himself Hindu. But he definitely, there were moments when I was doing the research where he's like, you're not going to do that. Like, that's crazy. Or when I would come back from things and he was like, oh my word. Like the chanting, the tantric sound healing. I think that definitely tested our relationship, but he's got a good sense of humor, so he mostly went along with it.
Nice.
Yeah. He did not come with me on anything, though, except, no, just one. He did the meditation with me. He learned TM. He didn't do the Vipassana, but he did a transcendental meditation course with me. But I found out later from him it was because I had told him about all of these athletes that did it, professional athletes that he really respected and admired. So he was like, oh, really? Like, that's kind of cool. I was like, you're not a football player. Like, when do you think this is going to come in handy? But he was really into, like, the mental toughness aspect of it.
Yeah, I really want to do it because of David Lynch.
Yeah, that's where I learned. David Lynch.
Let me write some sort of crazy.
It's going to let you write a book. I'm telling you, yeah.
Maybe.
I caught the big fish.
You did? Nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is a book by David Lynch.
Yes.
So after you went to Amma, what was sort of like your next step? Like you're like, okay, I did this here. I'm in New York City. This doesn't work for me. I know you started traveling around the world. You mentioned that your husband didn't go with you, but I know your sister went with you to Brazil, right?
Yes.
To see John of God.
Yes.
And so I thought the John of God story was particularly a little crazy.
So John of God, my sister does not appear in the chapter because the narrative just worked better without her in it, but she was there with me. John of God is a healer, a medium is what they consider him. So there's a lot of people around the world, including Oprah, who really believe that he can cure all that ails you, whether physical, emotional, spiritual. And so people will go down to see him in this small town in the middle of Brazil and get healing. You sort of just pass in front of him and you meditate for days and that kind of thing. And he scans, I guess, your auric field and then heals you. I don't fully know how it works because it's definitely out there. But people really believe in him and really.
But he does surgery on people.
Yeah, that's crazy. That stuff is, he does surgery without anesthesia. Sometimes there's cutting, and he claims that he cuts because the people need to see the cut, like the patient needs to see the cut, but not because it's actually required. But there are people who say that they have been cured of cancer and a lot of other things by going to see John of God.
Did you see any surgeries while you were there?
I saw some cutting and some eyeball scraping. It was really out there. And it ended up becoming a real anchor for me in the narrative of this particular book. So it's one of the first chapters of the book, of going down to seeing him and what happens there. And then when the conclusion comes, it sort of ties the whole thing up of what I found on this very long journey, because of things that happened related to him, but not directly from him.
So tell me more about that.
Sure. And so when you go to see John of God, you can also make wishes. And so you go down with your 3 intentions. It's sort of like wishing for, through a genie in a bottle. And what you can also do is bring photographs of other people who would like to be seen by John of God who can't make the trip. So you can save them the airfare down to Brazil. And he will scan the photographs and apparently do distance healing. So I guess if you believe that he can heal you by looking at you, it's probably not that much of a leap to think that he could also heal other people by scanning a photograph. So when I was going down, I started offering to people, including some colleagues at Google, that I could take their pictures down and that I could also take their wishes down if they wanted. And then I started telling random people because I'm super chatty. And so I was telling like the guy at the coffee shop and like the lady at Whole Foods and all these other people.
Did you have like a stack of photos with you?
Yeah, so I ended up getting bombarded with emails, like to the point where it was really crazy. Like so many emails, and I had to go run and get a bunch of photos printed at the local Duane Reade and whatever. And so I went down with all these wishes and all these photographs. And it wasn't until I was kind of researching the entire book and working on the conclusion that I went back and actually read the emails with a fresh eye. And I noticed a few things in common amongst the emails. And there were some things that were not necessarily as interesting. Like people gave me very specific instructions on how they could be reached. It was like, just in case this shit's real. Ooh, sorry. Just in case this is real, I want to make sure my wish is going to the right person, right? So they gave me like a full addresses, apartment numbers, like where they could be reached. Then the
like
other
Santa
thing,
Claus.
Yeah, it was like don't let them screw it up. If this is going to be real, I want to make sure the wishes are coming, like the good stuff is coming to my house.
Yeah.
The second thing that I saw in these wishes is that everybody was asking for the same things, and it was health, happiness, and love, and it was in that order. And then the third thing is that they all ended, every single email ended in the same way. And they all said, please don't tell anyone. Which I thought, well, so now I'm telling all of you, which is nice of me. I also told a bunch of people at TED, and I went and did it on the stage, and I wrote it in my book, so I told everybody. But I think it's because it's really important. It's important for us to know that we, at the end of the day, mostly all want the same things, right? It's at the end of the day, despite all of our differences and all the things that we might be searching for that are different, all the political divides, the religious divides, every other philosophical divide in this divisive time, that at the end of the day, we really all want the same things.
Yeah. It reminds me of one of the things you talk about in your book, which is Burning Man. So I've been to Burning Man, and when you go, you have the opportunity to write on the wall of the temple something, usually like a letter to someone who's passed or wishes or whatever. And I found that to be really moving. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience there? I know there's somebody in the audience here. You went to Burning Man.
Yeah, I met him at Burning Man. We didn't even know each other at Google, and we were in the same camp. I feel like everybody at Google has gone to Burning Man. Isn't it a job requirement? There's nodding heads. So if you can imagine me as a lawyer going to Burning Man, I mean, like a reasonably uptight person going to Burning Man, you can just do the math of what that experience was like for me. It was really uncomfortable at first. And I went and I was like, I feel so out of place, and I don't know what I am doing here, and I don't have clothes to radically self-express myself. Like I had to borrow this outfit from somebody. Like I don't have, I worked in tech. No, I did not have costumes. I don't have a lot of feathers in my wardrobe. Like I don't have stuff to wear at Burning Man. No one's going to see me in a bikini top. Like it's just not happening. I've had a child. It's not happening. So going there was really out of my comfort zone to to put myself in that situation. And I ended up loving it after a couple of days. Like once I kind of got in my groove and got over myself and got over the dust and got over the general lack of
dryness.
Yeah, just the dryness and the lack of sanitary conditions around bathrooms. Once I got over that, I really enjoyed it, and I felt like, I feel like you really, that cliche of what you need out of that experience is truly what you get. And I think that was true for me. I got a lot of rest at Burning Man. I think I was the only person who came back reasonably well rested, which also just tells you what a nerd I am, because I was like, 11 o'clock, I'm gonna go to sleep. Like I just was like not the person staying up until 5 in the morning and like doing drugs in the desert. Like I was just like, no, I'm just gonna go read a book and like, sleep in the healing dome. Like I was really taking it easy. But I engaged with it in the way that was comfortable for me, and I think I got out of it what I needed to. And the temple, I think, was a particularly powerful thing for me as well.
Did you write something?
Yeah, I left a lot of wishes for friends. Again, sort of, I think part of the journey and the way I've kind of justified indulging in this journey was taking people along with me virtually or mentally, wherever I could. So going to Burning Man, it's like, who else has got a wish? Like, I'll put it in the temple for you. And so, writing those for people was a really emotionally cathartic experience in a way that I was really surprised by. Like people who were mourning friends and loved ones, including a Googler, who had died in the Nepal earthquake, who you all probably remember, who was a friend of mine and a friend of a lot of friends in common. And so just being able to bear witness to that and to, to kind of mark that for his mom and for his friends was really meaningful.
Yeah.
So I think, again, I got out of it what I needed to.
Yeah.
And it's my favorite chapter in the book, so there's also that, which is...
So speaking of the book, when I was reading it, every night I would sort of come home and be like, I wonder what wacky story I'm going to hear tonight. And it's sort of like hanging out with you on and getting to hear all of your best stories. So what do you think of all of these wacky adventures? Like, what's the craziest thing that you saw?
I would say the tantric sound healing was probably one of the more out there experiences. My dad read the book, and when the galleys came out, and he was just like, he couldn't look me in the eye for a couple of days. Like he was just like, what on earth are you up to? And can you go back to Google? Are they still hiring? Can you go back?
Do you feel comfortable telling these guys about it?
Sure, yeah. So it's the experience was, I actually went after a Google sales conference because we had sales conference out in California.
Did you go with Google salespeople?
No, nobody from Google joined me. I should have asked people. I did not invite anyone on that particular trip. But a friend of mine who is a screenwriter was going to this thing down in Southern California, right outside of LA, in Santa Barbara. And she told me about it. And so I went to meet her after Google sales conference because it's already on the West Coast. So a lot of the things, it sounds like a very indulgent, like, oh, I'm like privileged and flying all over the world. But I really did tack a lot of the things that I did onto work travel, not just Google work travel, but just like generally because I'm a mom and I have a budget and I'm a working person. And so trying to coordinate these things into real life was part of the challenge and part of the reason the book took so long, the research. But
how long did it take?
I worked on it. I probably researched. I started it when Zia was about 1. She's turning 9 in February. The book, probably like 6-7 years. I've researched and writing, not constantly, obviously, but over the course of 6 years, 7 years.
It's a full-time thing.
Yeah. And so basically you lie on the ground, and this guy, he's like a 65, 70-year-old Indian man who is not my husband. He lies on top of you. There's a sheet between you, so it's weirdly not sexual. Not for me at least. So he lies on top of you, and then he chants. I can't believe I'm telling a story, Google. He chants into your chakra points. So if you know where your chakras are, you can use your imagination of what that entails. But he sounds into your head, and then like your throat, then your
all the way down.
All the way down.
Got it.
He goes all the way down.
Yeah.
And it was super bizarre. As you can imagine. So he's doing this, and it goes on for like 45 minutes. It's a really, you're committed to this experience. And then it's a group activity because there's people who are not all doing it with him, but they're all sitting around you as this is happening. So again, it that just wrote itself. Like I don't know how you don't write about that and share that experience with people if you have experienced it yourself. But it was crazy, but it was also oddly relaxing. Like it was like having noise canceling headphones on or being surrounded by like bees, but they're not stinging you, like just the humming.
Huh.
I know it sounds strange. It was actually kind of delightful. I haven't gone back, but I probably should because there were people who really enjoyed it much more than I did.
You have to give me his number.
I will. He's on Facebook. He follows me on Facebook.
Awesome. So speaking of group activities, one of the things you talk about is going to this Wiccan potluck dinner. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I found those. So when I think about Wicca, I'm kind of like, these are witches, and I don't really know what that means, and it sounds a little dark. But that chapter was super lighthearted, and the women seemed really lovely.
Yeah, everybody was amazing. That was actually one of the chapters that I think really challenged my own, I guess, unconscious bias against witches. I didn't know I had it, but it was the one thing. I know. I'm sorry if anyone in here is a Wiccan. Like I'm fully converted. Like I'm in it. I really respect what you do. That was the one thing that my editor actually encouraged me to do. So everything else was basically researched and planned of what I was doing, or I'd already done the research. And my editor was like, the gap that you have in this is Wicca. And I was like, why? Like I had this really childlike preconception of what it would mean to be a Wicca. Black pointy hats. Like, my kid watches Disney movies. Like that's what I was picturing, which is so, it's such an unconscious bias. Like I didn't even realize that I had this bias against witches. But I was like, well, I don't want to do that. It's kind of scary. Like I don't want to do that. And then she kind of kept encouraging me. She's like, I feel like that's the one thing that people do when they first step out of traditional religion, that a lot of people explore that. And I was like, all right, fine. So I started researching it. And as I researched more and more, I was like, this is actually super interesting because it is, there's no like rule book, right? Like it really is a choose what you want religion and practice, in a way that I think so much of us who don't ascribe to a specific religion or religious tradition, but still want to find something and some meaning, would actually be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like I believe in eating seasonally or whatever, like I respect nature, like I do a lot of the things that are core principles. I believe in being good to people and hoping that comes back to me and that kind of thing. And so I went to a potluck. It was a Thanksgiving potluck but not related to to American Thanksgiving. It was, I guess, Wicca Thanksgiving.
Is there a Wicca thing? When is Wicca Thanksgiving?
It was right around my daughter's homecoming time. So it was probably, I think, September, October. I think it's done by the lunar.
Oh yeah, it
calendar.
must be harvest.
Yeah, it's like harvest, exactly. Totally. And it was at the LGBT Center in Manhattan. And it was really wonderful. Like after I got over the sort of initial awkwardness of just dining with strangers, it was such a wonderful, warm group of people. And it was really just people, again, searching like the rest of us, right? Like just trying to find community, trying to find connection. A lot of people were new to the city and they were just looking for somebody else to have that kind of moment with. And it was a really lovely dinner. And these witches could cook. It was good food. My contributions were lackluster, but theirs were quite delicious. It was a really special evening.
So was there any time during this, I guess, journey where you were like, your curiosity was really piqued about a particular religion, where you were saying like, maybe I'll actually go in that direction?
I didn't really do traditional religious stuff. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if Wicca was probably the most traditional religion that I explored, which kind of gives you an idea. Yeah, so there weren't. The meditation was really powerful for me. I think that's something that I had started doing when I worked at Google, in fact. And
the TM or the Vipassana?
The TM, the TM part. And that's a practice that's really stuck with me, and that's become almost like mental hygiene for me, like a daily flossing, right? Like I just do it because it feels good, and it's not like your teeth will fall out if you don't floss one day, but you kind of feel icky all day. It's like that's what I feel like about meditation. It's like
so
if I don't meditate.
10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at night?
I do 20 minutes in the morning. I used to be able to do 20 minutes in the afternoon when I worked here because they had things like the mother's room and because Google, I know. But then don't leave Google ever. You can never do that kind of stuff when you leave this place. There is no meditation room at other startups. Like they don't have the space. So that practice fell by the wayside when I left Google. But when I was here, it was something that I did twice a day and was pretty committed to it. So that's a practice that's really stuck for me. And in terms of the other things, not really. Like none of them are things that I've been like, oh, I want to go back to that again and again, and I think this is my thing. So, but I think I've gotten to be okay with that. I sort of got to the end of the journey, at least for the narrative of this story, and got comfortable with just sort of stopping for a minute.
When was that? What happened?
I did the Vipassana.
Yeah.
I went on the silent meditation retreat. And I think just being still for that long and shutting up for a while was really good for me. And it got me out of my head, and it got me out of this sort of frantic search and just being like, you probably know the answers to a lot of these things, at least what's true for you, if you just quiet down a little bit and stop for a minute. And so that's what I ultimately did. I sort of stopped the frantic search. It felt like a nice natural ending to the story for this particular book. And I don't have that same kind of urgency around answering these questions, but I still, people ask me to do stuff all the time, and I'm like, yeah, let's go do that. Like I think the curiosity and the search of it is still fun for me. So I, every so often, will go do
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if you asked any of the people in this audience if they wanted to come with you, including me,
Totally.
yes, they would. So I have to ask, what about Zia? Like, what was the end result for her? She must have seen you doing this. She knew you published the book. Like, how did this impact her life?
Yeah, so she was really little when I was doing most of the research, and so I think she just thinks I'm sort of kooky and like always off doing things. It was concerning when she would tell her teachers about where I was, because then you can imagine like in a Manhattan private school, like they're like, oh, we heard you weren't talking for a few days, and like, what, is everything okay? And I was like, no, I was at a retreat. Like her kindergarten teachers were super concerned when I came back from that silent retreat, because just give them a bit of information. But I think what's been the most interesting thing for the questions. She does ask me questions that are themed to the book, and we just have conversations about it. I'm like, what do you think? The answer is like, I don't know what happens when you die. Like, what do you think? And she actually weirdly has a very easy relationship with the idea of death. Like, that's something that since she was little, I had told her, actually when Dan Fredenberg died, I had told her that when people die, that they become stars in the sky. My husband and I had told her this because she had come across a picture of his mother who had passed away when he was quite young. And I don't know why we said that, but that's what we kind of turned to. We're like, yeah, they become stars. She was like 3. And so when Dan passed away and she heard me on the phone talking to somebody and getting the news, she's like, what happened? And I said, well, a good friend of our friends died in an earthquake. And she sort of pauses and she's like, oh, you mean he became a star in the sky? And I was like, oh, yeah, I think he did. It was just a really maybe I'm not screwing this up so badly, but it was a really beautiful moment.
Yeah. It sounds. And you also described to me another beautiful moment about the librarian in your daughter's school, and I wondered if you would tell all of these.
Yeah, so not really related to the spirituality piece, but I think just the idea of all these conversations we're having in a place like Google or just across corporate America or Hollywood or anywhere around diversity and inclusiveness. And one of the things that I did not expect was how much having that book on a shelf would mean to me. And so the story we were talking about, when my book came out soon after, my daughter's school librarian sent me a text, and she sent me a picture of the book in the school library. And she's like, oh, we just got a copy of your book in. The next time you're in, could you sign it for us? And I just started crying. And I was so surprised, this is the most impactful thing. I'd done a TED Talk, and I was like, this is the moment where I was like, I can't believe that my little kid will walk into a school library, into her school library, and see a story that literally reflects her story in some way back to her. So I get a little choked up thinking about it. And it meant so much to me, because growing up in this country, in the time that I grew up, I did not have that expectation. And I didn't even know it was an option. I didn't know I was being cut out of a narrative, or that my narrative didn't exist on the library shelves or in Hollywood or anything else. It was just I'm a recent immigrant to this country. Why would my story be
Nobody would
told?
tell your story.
Yeah, I had to watch Bollywood films, and that's definitely not my narrative, but that's what I would watch to see somebody who looked like me and definitely can dance like me on the screen. But it wasn't something I had an expectation of. And to know that she and her friends would have that experience was so, so moving and meaningful to me in a way that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what now? So what are you doing now?
Oh gosh, $1 million question. I'm trying to come back to Google. I've decided that I can just hide out in the hallways. None of you would even notice. Like, dude, I could just stay here forever. No, I am kidding. I am. The book came out a bit ago, a few months ago, and so there's been some great, exciting interest around turning it into television in some way, which it would be. I mean, talk about like seeing yourself on screen. Not that I would be in it, but that other people would.
Who would play you?
Ooh.
Who do you think would play you?
Julia Roberts. No, I don't know. I'm totally kidding. I don't know. I like the idea of Archie Punjabi. Do you guys remember her from like Bend It Like Beckham? She played the sister in Bend It Like Beckham. She's super funny and like really, like she was like quick and funny. I really liked her. So yeah, maybe her. And then I told my husband that Dev Patel should play him. I'm just saying. And he started getting annoyed with me because I kept saying, like, did you see him in GQ? Like, he suddenly felt Slumdog Millionaire. Like, this guy got super cute. He should play you. And he's like, you gotta stop. So that was, yeah, it was only funny to me apparently. But
I hit on him in a gym once.
You did?
Yeah, it was great.
We'll talk about that in the after show. That's amazing. So there's some talk of that, which would be really, really exciting. I've been thinking about if I would write another book. I don't know. I'm doing some writing, different, like sort of my first time doing different things. I was just a clown in the Macy's Day Parade.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, super fun. There's definitely an article there. I highly recommend all of you to do that if you ever have the opportunity. You can volunteer to be a clown in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Didn't know that was a thing. Super fun, totally crazy. So there's things like that I'm exploring. And then, I don't know, we'll see. I'm excited. Stay tuned.
All right, cool,
Yeah.
cool. Well, before we open it up to questions, I guess I would say, like, what advice do you have for fellow seekers like me?
I definitely don't have answers. And I really do think it is about ultimately getting still and knowing that you have them inside of you. Like that whoever's telling you that they know for them, but they don't necessarily know for you. That's my gut.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Will you take some questions?
Yes,
folks in
please.
the audience. Anybody have any questions?
Not all at once.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Sonam. Thank you so much. I think it's really interesting what you spoke about. I definitely will read the book, but what I'm finding it difficult to is tying all this together. And if you had to say something like what should a reader take away from this book? Like, is there a underlying thing like, hey, I did this, and this is what I would conclude, or this is what I would say. I'm just trying to figure that out.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. I think the conclusion is really a bit of a non-conclusion. It was sort of like, this is an ongoing journey. This is something that it was very naive of me to think that I could answer within the pages of a 250-page book, because if that was possible, somebody would have done it already. And it was really, that I'll be searching probably for the rest of my life, and that I'm okay with that. And then the story that I told earlier about John of God and about the letters that I'd received, that for me was really a conclusion too. It was just that we're all seeking the same things. And so the health, happiness, and love part of that gave me a lot of comfort that ultimately everyone that I know really wants the same things. And if I can focus on that and on the things that bind us together as opposed to the things that drive us apart, especially in times like this, that I might be on the path to something.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Anjali, thanks for coming.
Hi, Erica. Thanks for
Hi.
being here.
So the tech industry is facing some really massive questions around responsibility, accountability in analog parts of society and the way we've, in so many ways, right? Sundar was in Congress yesterday. You also mentioned it was interesting thinking about how when you started this journey, you were a little quiet about it at Google. And so the third part of this is Jack Dorsey posted this tweet storm a few days ago. He did a 10-day silent meditation retreat in Miramar. What do you think the space is or the role is for spirituality in tech? Why is it not talked about? And at the executive level, like, do you think it's an important character trait for a leader?
Oh, it's such a great question, which I know is not the response you're supposed to give to a question, but it really is a great question. Why is it not talked about? Do you guys watch Silicon Valley? I mean, I suppose you live Silicon Valley, so you don't need to watch it. So I missed seasons of it, and there's like season 5 or something on United flights, and I was watching like one episode, which you can catch up on pretty quickly, but like you can figure out what's going on. And it was an episode about one of the developers who was going to come onto the new internet, where they find out that he's Christian. Right, so it's like he's going to start a gay dating website, and everyone's like, "That's cool, like that's great, like he's going to do that." And then it's like, "Wait, he's Christian?" They're like, "Don't tell anybody." And it becomes this big thing. And I thought it was so fascinating. So like that's what it's like, right? It's like the last taboo. We talk about everything now. Nothing's off the table. But for some reason, the thing that arguably is one of the most important things, like what do you believe about the things that really matter, that really drive your everyday, and we can't have those conversations. And I don't know why that is. I was embarrassed to talk about it because I really thought everyone would think I was nuts. And I'm sure people did. I remember a conversation at one of like the Women at Google events, and I had just come back from Brazil, and I was talking to a very senior salesperson at Google, and I was telling her, and you could see her backing away. She was kind of like, all right, like, wait, like this woman's crazy. And it was just such an interesting experience because I'm not this like deeply religious person, but the fact that I even have to say that by way of like contextualizing, like, don't worry, I'm not religious, like, I'm just a seeker, and I'm doing a lot of this for fun, and I have to like make people comfortable with it, I think is really interesting. But the thing that I've also found interesting is that since I've written this book, people come up to me and they spill forth their religious views or their spiritual views or their religious upbringings like a confessional to me now. So I know all kinds of stuff about people that, you know, in tech, not in tech, like all over the planet. And that's been really interesting to me. So to me, there seems to be a clear desire to talk about these things because people really do want to get to the stuff that matters. And I think until we all start talking about this stuff, nothing's going to change, right? So is it important for our senior leadership at a place like Google to talk about that stuff? I don't know. I don't want to impose on Sundar that he should be telling everybody if he's Hindu and if he's practicing and if he goes to temple and if he believes in God. Like it maybe doesn't matter. But I think if that is something that drives him and it's a belief system that informs how he leads this company, I think that's interesting. I would want to know that just out of curiosity. I think it'd be interesting. Thank you.
Hi, Anjali. Thank you for coming. So I myself am a Vipassana meditator, and I did the 10-day course and everything. But I'm new to New York, and I found it to be extremely difficult in New York to like find like 20 minutes just to like calm down. So do you have any advice or tips on how to meditate daily?
Yeah, you need to get access to the mother's room at Google and then go in there. I'm sort of kidding, but it's sort of true. I think
we actually have focus rooms now.
You have focus rooms?
Yes,
Ooh.
we have focus rooms where you're not supposed to do anything except for sit and think.
Wow. I really want to come back. Don't ever leave. That is the secret. Joking aside, I think it's being really intentional about carving out the time and doing it no matter what. And I think if you start, when I did that first TM class, I remember they said you had to do it for 2 months, I think, where they're like, try to not break the habit or the streak for 2 months. And then it just became a thing I did, where I'm not a morning person and I will wake up early to do it. So if you can, I would start by just waking up early, like if it's 20 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever your practice is. And then if you're trying to find space during the day, if you can block off a meeting, I would do that. And I think in a place like Google, people respect it, actually. It's not necessarily true of other workplaces, I can tell you that, because they'll be like, we've got a meeting, this is the only other time everyone can meet, and they just schedule over it. But I feel like here you can actually carve that space.
Have you done Search Inside Yourself?
No.
So there is a course here called Search Inside Yourself, which is essentially a meditation course started by an ex-Googler who's an incredible guy, Meng.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Search Inside Yourself is a course here, and at the end of it, you get paired up with a fellow SIY alumni. And the goal is essentially you have meetings together so that you can carve out the time to meditate. And if you write to that list, which is SIY-alumni, I don't know actually if you'll be able to access it, but there are tons of people who I'm sure would love to set up time with you.
Great, thank you.
There you go.
Hi. So I feel like maybe the questions that you started with in this book and the questions that kind of started this talk are generally like universal among people, and I think that everyone kind of wonders about a lot of these things. Thinking about like myself personally, I think my instinct or like my first movement here would be to think about exploring the more major religions and the more mainstream religions, and I think that a lot of the stuff you explored would kind of be a secondary thought. Can you talk a little bit more about your decision to kind of go that route instead of the more mainstream religion route?
Yeah, it was really because I'm not a theologian, and I didn't feel drawn to any of them. So I didn't feel like I could do a real, an adequate job of like exploring Christianity and then a little bit of Judaism and then Islam. It's like, how do you do that in a meaningful way with a full-time job, with a new kid? And I didn't feel drawn to any of them because I don't think this project was necessarily a rejection of the religion I was raised with. If you asked me now, like, what religion are you? I'd probably still answer Jan. I'm like Jan-ish. Like, people are Jewish, I'm Jan-ish. You know, like, I think that's still directionally what I feel makes sense for me because it's so cultural to me. So I think because I tied religion and culture so much together, it would be like searching for a new culture, and that wasn't really the project. But a lot of people have asked me that question. It just, it wasn't something that felt like the right direction. And so, so I went in this kind of other direction. But everything that I searched for and everything, all the experiences that I did were very much authentically what I felt curious about. And so it wasn't like, oh, it'll make a funny chapter. I was like, no, I kind of want to go to Burning Man, and like, I think I want to do a silent meditation. Like, it was things that I actually wanted to try. Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Please, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about the title of the book? Because I feel like this is maybe one, like God is something that I associate maybe more with mainstream religions than with other spiritual practices.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested to hear about kind of your thoughts about the connection between those and God.
Sure. So the original title of the book that I sold the proposal on was actually From Google to God. And I loved it, and I thought it was a really funny title. And then my editor, halfway through my writing process, was like, you got to change the title because it sounds like you left Google to become a priest. And I was like, oh, that's true, and that's not what happens in this book. But the idea of it just being a search, I wanted some reference to the tech kind of piece of it, and the fact that tech played such a large part, certainly in my personal journey and just of life and my career, but then also in how I was accessing a lot of these things, because so much of it started with an internet search, which is, that was part of the narrative. The stalking reference, it's a bit of a provocative sort of word to use, but certainly like a Facebook stalking kind of reference of like, but again, tongue in cheek. So there was a lot of thought put into the title, and I think it can be confusing to people. There's definitely Amazon reviewers who do not like my book because they're like, that's not the answer, and Christianity is the answer, or whatever. There's a couple of very angry people on Amazon, and I was like, well, then it's not for you, and I get it, but it was meant to be a bit tongue-in-cheek, too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My first question was the same as his, actually. My next question was anybody actually healed? Like, that you took to the Brazilian healer guy? Like, the people's
the follow-up.
Like, did anybody ever
Of the photos, so I don't think anyone I brought photos of was struggling with a real medical condition of the batch that I had. But that said, in follow-ups, so John of God also makes a trip to like Omega Institute in upstate New York, and so I had gone last year before my book came out. I drove up there because he was coming, and I was kind of like, oh, I feel like I should show a picture of my book cover to him and have him scan that and heal it. I just thought it'd be kind of like a nice tying up for myself. I don't know if he did it, but I left a picture of the book cover in his basket. And I did bring a photograph of a friend who was just diagnosed with breast cancer, and she is cancer-free. I don't think that did it. I mean, she also had medical treatment, right? Like, but I don't know. If it gives somebody a little bit of hope, I think that's okay.
Yeah, cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Anjali. Thank you so much for coming. I really enjoy that, especially because last night I had like my monthly existential crisis, reflecting on like these sorts of ideas. And one of the thoughts that came was, and this is actually a follow-up from a podcast I was listening to earlier this week, was that the sort of rationalist mindset, the very scientific-driven mindset, is fairly modern. Like, it's a byproduct of like the post-industrial revolution movements, and it's sort of like when you have that mindset where like you want to critically analyze, okay, why is this happening? I found that like even doing meditation, like my first thought after it is like, okay, I felt something, but like, why did I feel that? It has to be some like neurological process that's causing this. Like, clearly there has to be a rational explanation for that. So when you're doing all of these like very unorthodox things, like, did you find that you needed to suspend that sort of mindset of like, okay, how, like, there has to be a clearly rational way to explain like why this is happening?
Yeah, 100%. So if when you read my book, so the narrative really plays out that way. There's like this very lawyerly part of me that does the research and will talk about oxytocin release during a hug and like what that might mean and that's why hugging Amma could be effective because of that. But then the other side is kind of like, well, what's the feeling? Like, she smelled really nice. Like, it was a little sweaty, a little uncomfortable, but like it was also nice. And that juxtaposition, I mean, it was constant. Like, it was a constant dialogue in my head. It continues to be just the way I work and navigate the world. But that was very, very hard for me, and I would keep flipping back and forth. And I do address it a lot in the book because I think that's so many of us are in the same position where it's like we're raised to think a very specific way, and we're educated and overeducated and sort of repeating things again and again to become experts at something. And then here's this whole set of questions that are truly not Googleable. You will not find a satisfactory answer. You will find people purporting to know the answers on Google to all of these questions. I would challenge that maybe there are incorrect answers on Google. You need to tweak the algorithm on these particular things, but there are just things that are unknowable. And so if you start, I don't know how you reconcile those things. So I kind of flip back and forth too. But then ultimately it was like, I just got to suspend disbelief. Like, I can't try to explain these things, otherwise I'll just be stuck in a loop.
Just as a small follow-up,
Yeah.
look, when you're actually having these experiences, did you like just like push aside any of the thoughts that are like, okay, why is this happening? Why is
No, I think I did it really unsuccessfully. There were moments that I would, like the tantric sound healing being a perfect example. There are moments where I was like, this is so weird. And like my head was like, oh my God, I cannot believe I should not be doing this. My parents, like, what would they think? Like, they're going to hear about this. I can't write about it. Like, I was going on and on. I was like, this is bananas. I am married. Like, what am I doing? It was just like a loop. And then there are moments where I was kind of like, all right, just like relax, just breathe into it. And I was like, oh, it's kind of nice. Like, I was like, oh, like this is bizarre, but also kind of not altogether unpleasant. And then I'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe this man's lying on top of me. This is very awkward. And so it would just be like a constant thing. And that for me is also my meditation cycle, is like the monkey mind of the loop of like, what's going on? I have to make dinner. I have to go do this thing. I forgot to pick up the dry cleaning, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be meditating. I'm like, munch. I'm like, and then I'm like, crap, did I fall asleep? And I just keep going. And it's like constant. And I think, I feel like that's the very human journey. I don't live in the woods, right? Like, I don't live on a meditation farm. I live in New York City. I live downtown. I take the subway. I walk everywhere. Like, it is hectic. And I think that's just part of our life. But if you can push that reset button every day in some way, and the fact that you're just asking the questions, I think is great.
Well, thank you. Appreciate
Thank you. Going back this way.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to see you. Thank you for coming in. How did you know? It sounds like you got to a point where you felt at peace, that like the search, you had searched enough, you didn't find specific answers, and you were okay with that. Can you describe that? Because when you're just talking about the constant loop and it's really hard to break that cycle, how did you feel fulfilled on this journey, and what was that moment like for you?
Yeah. There are a couple of things that drove that. I think one was definitely the silent meditation experience of just being still for that long. I didn't do a full 10 days. I tell that story of why in the book, but I did a 5-day retreat. And by the end, I was like, I think I'm good for a minute. Like, I feel like just stopping, and I just need to sit with what I've already researched and sort of be in that, and feel like I have enough data, to inform something that felt right. And then also, truthfully, it was partially because I was on deadline. It was like, I can't keep searching, and I've got to turn this book in, and I have to be okay with not having a conclusion, because I'm not going to in time for this book to come out. And so either I can spend the rest of my life writing this book, and it'll be written and published posthumously, or I can try to wrap this up and be okay with the knowledge that I will never know the answer to these questions. And that's where I chose to land.
Sorry, one more. Thank you. One more question. it sounds like the impetus of this search was more about your daughter and the questions she might have as she grows older. When did you decide, hey, this is a book, and I should probably put this out there for more people to absorb?
Ooh, that's a good question. You know, there was a moment where it was going to be a film, and then I realized I did not want to be in a film, and so that was pushed aside. And then but I felt like there was something I wanted to do with it because it was fun, and anyone I would tell the stories to would be like, you have to write this down. Like, these are such funny stories, or they're really interesting, or whatever, depending on what story it was. So I started taking better notes as I would do things. And then I met an agent a few years ago, and he was like, you've got to write this. Like, this is a book. I know I can sell it, and that's what ended up happening. So it's sort of, I never set out to write a book. It just sort of, I mean, it sounds like such a jerky thing to be like, it just sort of happened, but that's kind of what happened. It felt like, you know, Jesus took the wheel. No, I'm just joking. That's not inappropriate, but I feel like it sort of just played out the way it was meant to, I think. Yeah.
I have a question. How forthcoming were you when you went and traveled around and met with different, like when you went to the Wiccan potluck? Did they ask you why you were there? Did you tell them? And if so, what was the response?
Yeah, I was incredibly forthcoming. I am a lawyer. I do not want to get sued by anybody. I wasn't trying to dupe anybody. I was very, very clear that once I decided to turn it into a book, I was very clear that I was writing a book. And for anybody that was prior chapters, I reached out to people to make sure that they were okay with what I was writing, because everything in the book was true. And so anyone that certainly if I named them, I gave everyone the opportunity to change their name or to read what I was writing, so I didn't want anyone to feel made fun of or, you know, like kind of sideswiped from what I was writing, because it was not meant to be like a takedown of all these different practices. So I was very, very forthcoming when I did it. Thank you from the legal team of Google for asking. Yeah.
Were there any ways in which you feel like your life has been changed in either positive or negative ways that you were not expecting after the experience?
From the research or just from the whole
research,
experience?
writing, anything, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's opened up in ways that I wouldn't have expected, for sure. I think just, you know, what it did was, one of the habits I think I learned working at Google, actually, was to be ready for anything and to really put myself into uncomfortable situations, right? Like, again, as a lawyer, you're trained to like know something, to go really deep on that issue, to really be the expert. And working at Google in the years that I did, that was not going to be the situation. It was like, here's a new product, we're launching this other thing, and you just had to go figure it out. And working that muscle here, I think led to me being really comfortable going into these very uncomfortable situations for the research for this book, and has become a theme of both my career and my personal life since then, where it's been like, it's just opened up all these things, because something like becoming a clown in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, like that is not something I would ever have thought I would do. And I went and I had so much fun, and it was so goofy, and it was such a delightful thing to do. And I think it's because I worked at Google and then did something like this that I'm willing to put myself out there and sort of suck the marrow out of life while I'm here. And I think that's definitely what this has taught me, for sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Anjali, for
Thank
coming.
you.
And I think if we've learned anything, it's that in addition to wanting love and health and what was the other?
Happiness.
And happiness, I think also everybody kind of wants to know what's it all about. So thanks for bringing us together to talk about that. And if you haven't read the book yet, I highly recommend it. It's so much fun, such a fun journey at the back of the room. Pick up a copy, and it's nice to see you all.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much, everybody.